Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait for 1 or 2 more minutes for everybody to arrive, and then we'll start the Hangouts on Air. For those of you who have just joined, we're just waiting for the last people to arrive, and we'll start this Firebase Masterclass in 1 minute. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Hangouts on Air. My name is Florian, and this is my colleague.
Hey everyone, my name is Sanchit.
He is a product specialist, so as promised, this will be a more technical Hangouts on Air, and we'll be covering different topics regarding Firebase, and we'll walk you through some of the features Firebase has to offer.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the agenda and start off.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, we'll be going through over the next 20-25 minutes a series of overviews to familiarize you with Firebase, and the intention is to really get everyone to explore Firebase if you are new to it, and get you started with some of the key functionalities and how we can leverage the Firebase features along with AdMob to make smarter monetization decisions. So just quickly, we'll be going through an overview of Firebase, what Firebase is, what are the different product features. We'll then talk about linking AdMob apps to Firebase and what is the process and what are the steps involved in linking all of your apps to Firebase. Then we'll look at AdMob reporting and what are the insights we get from Google Analytics for Firebase once we link the apps. Then we'll take a look at a demo account, which is a great way to explore the Firebase UI and all the analytics dashboards with real data. If you're just curious to see how things look and just familiarize yourself with the Firebase console. We'll be taking a deeper look at remote config, which is one of the most popular features of Firebase, and it enables you to remotely configure code within your app from server side without the hassle of pushing new updates and going through the entire process of making changes and testing them out and then releasing newer versions. We'll be looking at how we can leverage other Firebase features along with remote config for smarter monetization. So this will include discussions about how some of the new Firebase offerings include machine learning capabilities to make predictions about user actions and how we can leverage those to make a unified monetization strategy. And lastly, we'll recap and share a few learning resources that we think can help you explore Firebase further. Okay, let's get started. So first off, what is Firebase? So it essentially is a unified app development platform where the intention is to enable developers to quickly build high-quality apps and grow their businesses across different platforms. So that's a great feature that the features work across Android, iOS, and web. You don't have to deploy separate codes for each of the platforms. And the other great thing is it is designed to work at scale. So no matter what is the requirement in terms of scale and size, Firebase is built to work flawlessly with massive scales. And
so if I have one app or 30 apps, it should work equally fine.
Yeah, so it is all of the features, including the cloud storage and the analytics functionalities, that are designed to have like flawless functionality at massive scales. And so this is, think Google scales is basically what Firebase offers to you. So this is a look at some of the main functionalities and products within Firebase. We broadly categorize them into features that help you during your development phase. So features like real-time databases, which you can integrate, and it's like fairly simple to get started with a database integration and authentication, which can save a lot of time defining login flows and getting new users to log in instantly. And features like crash reporting that can help you during your develop phase. And once you have the app out in the markets, you can leverage analytics, which can enable you with a lot of insights on user behaviors. And it works really well with the other features like remote config, for example, when you can define audiences that perform a particular action or fit into a particular category, and then take actions for those specific audiences to grow or retain users. So there are a lot of features to cover. We'll mostly be focusing on features that relate more to monetization strategies, but then feel free to explore the others as well. These are all really amazing features that can help during all stages of a developer's journey.
Great. Let's deep dive a little bit more.
Perfect. So let's start off with how we can link apps from AdMob UI into Firebase. And so it's 4 steps essentially. The first one is you link app within your AdMob account. So if you're using the new AdMob, you'll have the app dashboard and the option to go to the all apps, which will list out each app in a row. And the previous UI, the old AdMob, will also have a gear icon towards the top, which will take you to the app management section. Now, once you arrive at these views, you'll have a link to basically link each app to Firebase if it's not already linked. And once you click on it, you'll be asked to identify the project within Firebase for which you want to link that particular app. And then that is basically it. So once you link it from the AdMob UI, you will be shown a prompt to download the Google services.json file, which is required for Firebase to function with the linked app. And you need to download it and include it to your project. So for example, for Android, you'll need to move and copy this file to the app directory of your project. The next step is you configure the Gradle plugin to inform the app that you'll be using Firebase functionality and include all of the libraries. And then you can start using individual services by integrating them one by one as per your needs within the app. So there is an AdMob Garage video which walks through the entire process using screencasts to actually show you what exact actions to take. And we'll be sharing all of these links once the video becomes available on YouTube later on. So you have the option to go back and refer to these as well. Okay, moving on. So once the app is linked, let's talk about how Google Analytics for Firebase can empower with really amazing insights, and you can leverage those to make your monetization much better and smarter. So at Google I/O earlier this year, we announced the integration of Google Analytics for Firebase with AdMob functionality so that both these platforms come together to offer amazing insights. So with AdMob, you're already able to track a lot of the ads performance metrics of the ad units, the clicks, the impressions, and the ads revenue. And with Firebase, you have the capability of tracking user engagement very closely and what actions people take on a specific screen within your app, for example. And also different revenue streams and how they come together to perform for your monetization strategy. Now, what this enables publishers to do is you can answer questions like, what is my true lifetime value, factoring in both ads revenue and in-app purchases. So when you ask how much money you're making, it's like these are the key insights that can really help you get a broader picture and make much more informed decisions when it comes to ads and overall monetization. So these are some, we encourage you to link your apps and try out, and we'll be going through 2 key reporting features that become available. So again, this is the new AdMob, which was launched in I/O. And one of the amazing things is for each app, you have an app overview dashboard, which will enable you in a quick glance to go through the key metrics of your apps.
So just as a side note for everyone who's still on the old AdMob interface, the new one is being rolled out as we speak. Yeah. But for everyone who has a little bit more complicated setup. So, for example, they have floor prices or they have mediation. For them, it takes a little bit longer, but the rollout is happening as we speak.
Yeah, exactly. And so once you link your apps, these two cards are enabled, which offer you the insights that we just discussed. So one is around holistic revenue streams. So you can actually see how much of your revenue is coming from mediation versus ad mob traffic, and how e-commerce and in-app purchases are performing for your apps. So these enable you to track multiple streams and really understand how your monetization is working for you and what changes you need to make. The other interesting card that is unlocked on linking to Firebase is the user metrics, and it has all these granular metrics around sessions per users, the ad exposure, what percentage of time an ad was visible to users, the average revenue per user, and all the other stats around usage activity. Now, what this enables us to do is we can track the impact of, for example, say, when you introduce a new ad unit, how does it impact my average revenue per user or the sessions per user, exactly. So you can have these metrics to track the impact and then make decisions based on what you see. So those were the key reporting additions that Firebase brings in when you link the app. Now let's jump into the Firebase console. And one of the great ways to familiarize yourself, if you've not already started exploring it, is using the demo account. So the demo account is available to everyone, and it enables us to look at all the Firebase dashboards and analytic functionalities with real data. So that makes it that much more powerful, and it's a great way to familiarize yourself with the front end or the Firebase console if you're new to it.
And it's available for free, right?
And it's available for free. That's perfect. So it's a perfect solution if you want to just familiarize yourself with the front end. I'm actually going to jump into it now and just quickly go through. Just for a minute. So when you first arrive at the Firebase console, the very first card will have an Explore a Demo Project section over here. And if you click on it, you are taken to a demo project. Now, this is available to everyone, and we highly recommend and encourage you to explore this further. So this will have all the real data from apps that are out there, and you can really see the analytics in action with real data. So for example, let's jump into the analytics dashboard, and you can see the average usage trends, the most real-time statistics over here. There's the top conversions. You can actually define which conversions matter to your app and then track them over here. And it has all the insights around how stable is your app, the crash reporting, then the average app versions that are out there, and also retention cohorts. So it's an amazing overview to get a quick glance of how things are progressing with your apps. And if you click on any one of them, you can get into a deeper, more detailed view. For example, if we click on the screen events, we can see for the key screens within our app, how has been the performance and whether there have been any significant changes that we need to address. So we highly recommend you to explore this if you are new and are looking to just familiarize yourself. And you can explore the different functionalities. For example, predictions over here is a newly launched feature, which we will be discussing it in briefly later on, but it leverages machine learning to give you amazing capabilities. Yeah, so it's all really exciting to have all these features, and this demo project enables you to explore it with real data. Okay, let's jump back in to our presentation. And okay, so moving on, let's take a deeper look at one of the most popular features of Firebase, which is remote config. And we'll talk through how we can actually implement it in the app using Android code, for example, and look at how we can use it along with our ad units to make a better monetization effort. Okay, let's jump right in. So first off, remote config, as the name suggests, it's essentially the ability to remotely configure code or fractions of code within your app that enable you to skip the long process of rebuilding an app, testing out the changes, and then deploying it for all of your users to update the app for very small changes. So if you need to make small incremental changes, remote config is a great solution.
So I could test a new ad format, for example, without having to update the app.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a great example. And we'll actually be going through one similar example later on. But yes, you can conduct all sorts of experiments with different ad units and the different settings within these ad units using remote config. And that can enable you to like make better decisions of whether you want to go with a different color, for example, in a native ad unit, or you want to place the call to action at towards the top or bottom. You could switch these placements using remote config.
It allows you to easily test different things, different placements, different colors.
Exactly. So it allows you to basically optimize a lot of your performances without the need of like pushing a new version of the app altogether.
So once you've found the right placement, color, then you can push the update.
Yeah. So all the changes are made server side, and once you go through the steps to code the app to enable remote config, you can make server side changes which are in the developer mode, they're almost instantly reflected within your app, and in the production mode, it can take up to a few hours to have those changes scaled across all of your user bases. Okay, let's look at the steps involved in implementing a remote config. So there are 5 key steps. You start off with including the Gradle dependency. Then you set the default parameters so that your app functions even without remote config values. Then you create a remote config setting within the Firebase console and come back to the app to the next step of writing the code to actually read or fetch the data from Firebase servers and activate it to be used within your app locally. And once that is done, you can use local variables and read value from the Firebase config servers to assign those values and use them locally within your app. So it's these 5 steps. Let's take a brief view on each of these steps and how they are done. So for example, in Android, the first step of including Gradle dependency will be this adding this line of code to your app level build.gradle file. Now, the current version is 11.6 and the developer documentation will always have the most recent version listed out. And once you add this Gradle dependency to your app level file, you need to sync your project and then create a singleton remote config object. This remote config object will enable you to save the default values and also get the latest values from the servers. So once that is done, we move to the next step of setting the default values or default parameters. So how that is done commonly is using a map, which is a classic XML key value pair. So for each local variable or code or parameter that you want to edit via remote config, you need to store it with a key value so that we can refer to the key to get to this value both within your app as well as within the Firebase console. So the key will be the reference point within the Firebase console as well. So we need to make sure that it's the same exact string that is used to make sure we are properly fetching the right values. Okay, and once you define these default parameters, you need to use the set defaults method to assign these defaults to the singleton, the remote config object. Okay, the next step is to create a remote config setting within the Firebase console. Now, I'm going to jump back into the Firebase console and actually go through these steps. So if I go back out of this demo project and just go into any sample project, we need to go down into the remote config settings. And over here, we can add a parameter. So for example, we could have, as we discussed, like an ad unit. And then have a default value, which could be CA. Just for example, let's go with this one. So we add this parameter. Now what this does is, for this key, we have a reference for a default value, as well as we can change it to a different value later on. So this process creates a remote config object here, which we can then from the server side edit its value and push or publish changes so that our app then receives the latest value that we set from this console.
So just remind us, how long does it take to go live?
So again, in the developer mode, the changes will be instant, but in production mode, no matter how large your user base is, the changes will be pushed within a matter of hours.
And do you deploy it to all your users, or can you choose a certain percentage of your user base?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have the option to roll out a new change gradually to a percentage of users. And that's a great point, actually. We'll be going through it as well in a moment of launching a feature or a change to a limited portion of users and then gradually deciding to scale it up or down depending on how it goes. Perfect. So with this remote config created within the console, I'm going to jump back into our steps. So once this is achieved, we then move back into the app to write the code to make a call to the Firebase servers to see if we have a new value for the remote config that we created within the console. So that is done with the fetch function. And this is where you need to specify the time or how frequently you want to fetch the values. And on a successful fetch, like if there is a new value available, you also need to call the activate fetched function, which makes that value available locally within your app. And just to reiterate, all of these descriptions and code snapshots are from the developer documentation. So at any point, you can go back to the developer documentation and refer to more detailed descriptions of all these steps. And we'll also be linking those in the video's descriptions in YouTube. Perfect. So once you've created the Firebase remote config object within the console and then come back to the app and write the code to make a fetch call and then activate on success, you basically have the fetched values available in your app and you can start to use them. So that's the next step. You can call on the singleton, and then depending on the variable, you can, for example, get a string. In this case, it's a welcome message key from the developer documentation. You could very well replace it with the add unit ID that we used, and that would fetch the latest add unit ID that we set in the Firebase console. So without making any changes in the app, we can actually change the local variables by enabling remote config on them. And that kind of opens up a lot of potential for a lot of fine-tuning and optimizations that you can do and test out depending on how your app is designed. So these were the 5 steps to basically enable remote config. And as we saw, add unit is one of the examples when we can change an add unit and basically test out different settings to better monetize. Now, that's exactly the next thing we're going to discuss. And we want to call out here, there's a code lab which in 10 minutes kind of walks you through the whole process of creating a remote config setting for an ad unit, as we discussed, within an app. And it enables you to roll it out gradually towards users, depending on how they interact with the new change. Now, in this case, this example, you will actually take a sample app and implement remote config yourself. And it's a guided step-by-step process on codelabs.developer.google.com. And you're starting from using a static add unit within your apps, which is a hard-coded string. And then the end state will be, you'll be removing the hard-coded values and linking that variable to remote config to read from the servers. And that gives you the ability to basically change the ad units for a fraction of users. It may be with, for example, if you want to test out, how about offering a higher reward for a rewarded ad unit? And you can do that using remote config to basically have a different ad unit ID with a higher reward set within the AdMob frontend, and then use remote config to basically roll out that higher reward ad unit to a proportion of users and see whether it makes it too easier for the users, or if you think you should roll it back, in which case you can scale it back.
So yeah, as previously discussed in one of our other masterclasses, this is also a great way to test rewarded videos versus in-app purchases. So it's a good way of seeing how much do I need to give users as a reward in order for them to accept the rewarded video, or should I stay with in-app purchases? And you can easily test different things. You can test, do I want to have in-app purchases and rewarded videos at the same time, so give the user the option, or just have one or the other, and so on. And as Sanchit just described, it also is a good way to fine-tune the reward you give your users. So you don't want to give them too much, but you also don't want to give them too little, in order to make sure that they actually watch the video. And
that's a great point, Florian. And actually, the one great thing about Firebase is all the different products talk very well with each other. So for example, you could define an audience for all the users who have made an in-app purchase, and then decide on a different monetization strategy for them versus others who have not made the purchase and rely more on ads to monetize those users. So with Firebase, the audiences and the remote config and cloud messaging, all these different features talk very well to each other. That enables all sorts of creative opportunities for you to explore. Now, and in this example, I just want to call out that here we modify the ad unit ID to basically use a different ad unit, within your app without pushing a new version. What you could also do here is, if you have, for example, a native ad unit, you could change the background color of the native ad to test out how users respond to a different background color, for example. And it's basically up to you to explore how you want to fine-tune and optimize your experiences. But it's great to be familiar with this overall functionality and have the knowledge to basically implement remote config along with ads. Of course, it's also available for you to use outside of ads in your app in general. Okay, going on. So as we mentioned a while back, that we can actually roll out changes to different user segments, and we can test how those changes are received by the users and then make a decision whether you want to scale it up or scale it back. Let's jump into the Firebase console to see how we can achieve that. So again, within remote config, you will see the remote config objects that are created here. And if you go into edit, you will see the add value for condition. Now you also have the newly launched A/B testing feature, which is a great functionality to conduct A/B tests, but we'll just go through the flow of using remote config to gradually roll out this new feature. So if I click on define a new condition, I'm taken here to basically define a new condition that suits my needs. So for example, if I decide I want to only test this out for, say, 30% of the app's users, then I could say, name it as users. Colors can help you differentiate if you have a lot of different tests running parallelly. Now, you can apply this to either users in a random percentile, the OS type, or you can even target countries and regions. For example, if you want to only roll out a few changes within US, you could do that from these options. So I'm going to select random percentile here because I want to test this new change or a new ad unit reward for a random 30 percentile. So I'm going to put it as user in random percentile as equals 30% and create this condition. So now I am at this stage wherein I have the parameter that I want to remotely configure, which is the ad unit ID. I have a default value for it, which is what we created initially. And for the test, I can enter a different ad unit. So for example, let's go with this. So what this will do is for 30% users selected randomly, it will use the new ad unit, which we just entered. And for the others, it will fall back to the default value. So once I update this and then publish changes here, I can go back into my app and again make a fetch call and all the steps that we went through to basically make the latest values available for the users. So this is a great functionality if you want to test out a specific change for limited sort of users, either in a region or users who use a particular language, or using a random test. So we just wanted to walk you through a functionality of like how it's done in the interface and also the code required. And we encourage you to explore this further and try out your own variations of it. Okay, moving on. So let's talk a bit about how we can leverage other Firebase features for smarter monetization. Remote config, of course, is one of the key ways we can do this. And it can basically allow you to fine tune a lot of factors within your app and see what goes well, and what needs to be scaled down. The other features, one feature we're really excited about is Firebase Predictions. Now, Firebase Predictions basically leverages a lot of machine learning to make predictions about user behavior, and then it can actually make cohorts of users who are likely to take an action or not take an action, and then allow you to perform actions on them. For example, you could, like, I'm just like thinking here that if you have a prediction that a set of users are likely to drop off your game after reaching a very tough stage, then you can maybe use cloud notifications to send a tip or a hint to those users. And the other is if you know that a bunch of users are likely to make in-app purchases, then you can have a different monetization strategy for them. So I'm just coming up with examples here, but this is a really powerful tool. And the best part is you can actually create your own audiences. So you can define custom audiences based on what is relevant to your app. For example, is the number of users, the number of monthly active users, the most important metric, in which case you can see how many users are likely to leave your app after 30 days of installing it, and then target them with a very customized messaging to retain them and boost your retention further. So again, Firebase Predictions is basically taking all the magic of machine learning and empowering you with a lot of new insights and the capability to take actions for users who are likely to take an action or fall into a particular bucket of behavior in the future. That's super exciting. Another key feature we want to discuss today is the cloud messaging. Now, both of these are free features that you can leverage along with your monetization strategy. And the great thing is they both talk to each other very well. So for example, for users who are likely to uninstall your app after 10 days, for example, you could have a customized cloud messaging to them, and that instantly delivers a customized message to only those section of users, so that you can encourage them to try out a new feature or offer them a new way of engaging with the app.
So this is a way of improving your retention and making sure that your users continue to engage further and further with your app.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So that's one great application of it, but it's really a feature for you to use based on what suits you best. So with cloud messaging, you can use audiences along with cloud messaging to have tailored messages for the most key audiences of your app, and experiment with it to see how your users best respond to different kind of notifications or messages. For example, if it's right now we have the Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and you could potentially use cloud messaging to have a notification sent to all of your users who have made an in-app purchase that you're offering a special discount for another premium feature in your app using cloud messaging. So that free feature allows you to reach out to the premium audience, premium users of your app, and boost their engagement further. So it's again an amazing feature, and we encourage you to try it out and share with us like how you come up with using it in different ways to boost your monetization and overall app experience. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of what we've gone through so far. We started off with a description of Firebase and what are the different products that it offers. We went through the steps of linking an app within your AdMob account to Firebase. We looked at the reporting and how the revenue streams and the user metrics can empower you to better make more informed decisions regarding ads and monetization. We looked at a demo account, which is a great way to explore the Firebase UI and make yourself familiar with the dashboards and the reports. with real data. So even if you are just starting out and you're keen to explore Firebase console in general, that's a great way to do it. We looked at remote config in a bit detail about what steps and what code is actually needed to implement it, and also brainstormed a few cases of how you could use it along with ads to improve the monetization experience. And lastly, we discussed about Firebase predictions and the cloud notifications, which are free features that you can use along with AdMob to basically make your ads and monetization decisions better. And let's share a few learning resources and go through what we already have on the internet to learn further. So starting off with Firebase developer documentation, this is again a very comprehensive and a key resource if you want to learn about how the APIs work, what are the different code labs available, how the Firebase functions work for iOS, Unity, or Android. So again, with all developer documentations in general, your Firebase developer documentation is the best friend when you want to learn more about exactly how the libraries and the functions work, and also look at examples of how things are implemented. Next up, we have a Udacity course. Now, I wanted to call out, this is a great course which is freely available to everyone on Udacity, which is a platform for online courses. And this particular course walks you through using a set of features, from including features you can use during development, and then all the way to remote config and user sign-ins to basically, in 48 hours or less, you'll be familiar and comfortable with thinking of how you can use Firebase features further in your real apps. So we highly recommend this course, and it gives a great overview in a short time of what is possible with Firebase. Another great resource is the Code Labs. So on codelabs.developer.google.com, you have a bunch of code labs that are available, and each of them is a guided step-by-step kind of learning experience, and you're walked through doing, like, making small changes. We describe what code is needed, where you want to make the changes, what are all the steps that are involved in either using Firebase remote config, for example, or using Firebase cloud storage features. So please explore all of these available resources, and just searching for Firebase on the Code Labs homepage should bring up all the Firebase related code labs, and you can explore them at your own pace. Another key resource is the YouTube channel of Firebase has a lot of very interesting and very informative videos, which are short, concise resources to basically quickly learn about a new feature and go through how it's implemented in sample apps. So there are a lot of such videos on the Firebase channel, including Firecast videos. Some of you may be familiar with some of the Firecast videos, which are very similar to how AdMob Garage videos work. And they're, again, a great resource. So we recommend you to try these out. And if you are stuck at something, the developer documentation and these videos are your best resource to move ahead. And lastly, I just want to call out that a lot of apps are using Firebase and seeing very good results. And we highly encourage you to explore how you can start using Firebase and some of its key features within your apps, and basically start off linking your apps to Firebase and then benefiting from all the reporting insights from Google Analytics, and also using all the other development features to improve your app's experience for the users. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, Sanjit. And to sum it up, I mean, first of all, have a look through the code labs, have a look through the sample app, try the test projects, have a look at Firebase, identify how it can help you. Yeah. Once you familiarize yourself a little bit with Firebase, adjust the Firebase that it fits your needs. Make sure that you make the most of it by filtering through all the analytics to find out how it can help you, how it can increase your retention, how it can improve your monetization, and
Yeah.
Sanchit, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us.
As a heads up, our next masterclass will be in December, and we will be joined by a colleague who will talk us through policy issues. But you will receive an invite for that in a timely manner. Thank you very much, and
Awesome. Have
a nice afternoon.
Bye.